Hello and welcome back to Call Center Helper. My name is Xander Freeman, Digital Content Director, and today we're talking more about insights from our 2024 survey. I'm fortunate enough to have Kay Littlehales from Kay Littlehales Consulting and Garry Gormley from Fab Solutions on the call with me. They've recently joined together to create a new organization called High Performing Culture. Hello, guys.
Hi
Hello.
there.
Thanks for inviting us, Xander.
No, thank you for coming along to this. It's like I say, I think you two have got some really interesting takes on what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm flattered that you two agreed to do this.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting. So we're talking specifically today about the question, do the managers and leaders in your organization understand how to engage their teams? The main point that I bring out from this is the 5% increase or decrease, depending on how you want to look at it, of engagement falling within teams and the leaders' ability to actually engage their teams. So without further ado, what do you think is causing this? Take it away.
Ladies first, Kay.
Where do we start with this? It's a great question, Xander. And I think, so Garry and I met you at the Max Contact event, and it was great because Garry and I were speaking about this subject. And since then, we've done some more work with different organisations, and part of that survey has actually given us some insight here. So I'll just share some of that information with you, and then Garry can butt in as and when he wishes to as well. So there's two things. There's one thing that we refer to as intentional leadership. So our leaders equipped to strategically plan thinking, feedback and coaching space into their projects. And what I mean by that is we're all KPI driven, we're all task driven, but are we looking at the more intrinsic factors of behavior and habits? And then the second one is non-negotiables, which I can elaborate on, but the non-negotiables that we're speaking about are our routines are blurred. So since the pandemic, and I hate to keep using the word, but since the pandemic, we've got this unconscious habit that's driven by transactional behavior as opposed to meaningful behavior. We've just become robots. And a bunch of leaders in a meeting, I think it was 3 weeks ago, we said, everybody just show your calendars. And they did. And there was very little space in there for personal development. There's no space in there for informal conversations. And rather than me going off on a tangent about it in great detail, I'll pass this to Garry because Gary's been doing some great work with it. But I think intentional leadership and non-negotiables are we must build in development time and thinking space and creative space for our teams.
Yeah. And you know what? I think it's a really interesting question that you've asked your audience there, Xander. Do managers and leaders in your organization understand how to engage their teams? What a powerful question to ask. And I think when you look at your 2023 results, and I think it was around just over 11% versus the 2024 result, which is around 16%, that's almost 20%. That's almost like a fifth of people don't feel like their managers and leaders really understand how to engage them. And I think when we break that down and when we think about what goes into engagement and what goes into people feeling motivated and feeling like they want to come to work, there's a few different aspects that we can pull into that, isn't there? There's the one for me that kind of stands out is, do I feel valued, and do I feel motivated enough to actually want to come into the office, and do I feel like my manager cares enough, gives me feedback in the right way, coaches me in the right way? And I think there was a stat that Kay shared quite recently on LinkedIn, and I think it was 47%, Kay? 47% of employees felt like their managers or leaders didn't give them positive or constructive feedback around their performance. And I'd say there is a direct correlation between the results that you've got within your survey and those results that have come from Gallup. And there's a few different stats that I've looked at specifically for this meeting, and there's only 10% of UK employees that actually feel engaged. And in the UK is probably in the bottom in Europe. So there's a whole host of things that are impacting that across contact centers and all sorts of other industries. And the work that Kay and I are doing to help leaders understand how their teams are feeling and how they as leaders show up for their teams is rooted within a lot of the stuff that we've designed for high performing culture, because you can't have high performing teams and you can't have engaged teams without teams that don't feel like they can trust the leader, without teams that have low levels of conflict, without teams that are really clear on their objectives and feel accountable for the performance and can hold their leaders accountable, which will drive a positive impact on performance and a positive impact on results. So I think whilst it's only a 5% shift, I think that's a significant change in a year. That's quite a material shift in a year to see in that question. What's your thoughts, Kay? Do you see synergies in some of the work that we've done with data and organizations that we've worked with together?
Yeah, definitely. And I really like your key points there, Garry. I think if we take ourselves back to February 2020 and we think about our own habits in the morning, there were more unconscious things taking place. So we'd get up earlier. We're more likely to put a key in a car, drive to work and get there and think, how did I get here? Have meaningful conversations before we even turn the laptop on. And we're now doing an average of 240,000 less steps per month. So motivationally, we are not connected. And let's be honest, like, human beings now are more aware, more self-aware than they ever have been. It could be through the internet. So we've got the knowledge, but we're not embodying it. And I've got a big thing about this. So when I talk about the things that Gary's just spoken about there, when I spend time with leaders on a one-to-one, I get that real person. When I see them in a meeting room with their teams, it's a different person. So I think there's something around individuality and vulnerability that we need to recondition the way that we think, act and feel, because we're in danger of just becoming robots. And I've written down here just in a bit of preparation. So when you and I met, when Garry and I met you at the Max Contact Centre, we shared these stats. I've got them here. So 2,000 people that we've spent time with, leaders and teams, 82% of them feel uncertainty and frequent anxiety, like something is going to happen. 68% need to build in more intentional personal development time and time to spend with the team and peers. And 70% feel lazier. So that comes from leaders. That I will say, speaking from my own experience, I have become lazier. It takes me much more effort. So I think effort leadership plays a significant part in creating engaged teams, because the effort that we lead with is subliminally telling those teams, get off your backsides, do something. I'm doing it. I'm showing you that I'm doing it. I'm not talking about it. And how we show up is not in an email, because there's 70% of one team that I spend time with that are leading via email. It's crap. It's bullshit. People do not respond to an email. You can't feel it. You can't sense the meaning behind it. And you can really misinterpret an email.
Yeah. And you know what? It's interesting, Kay, that you talk about vulnerability, because vulnerability is one of those aspects that we talk a lot about in some of the programs that we run. And it's becoming more of a theme within employees, just as much as it is with customers. I mean, we talk about vulnerable customers all day, every day, in a lot of the conversations that I have, but we almost don't really correlate those two to the people that we're working with, and how that impact of cost of living and energy and all the changes that have happened in the last 5 years have affected individuals and how they show up in the workplace. And I think that's reinforced by some of the data that we've seen in one of the most recent Gallup reports, is that 38% of UK employees are saying that they don't trust their senior leadership. They don't feel like they can be vulnerable with their leaders and tell them how they're actually feeling, in case it's construed as a performance issue, in case they don't get the right level of empathy, or they feel like it's going to be used against them to maybe performance manage them. So I think there's a whole host of stuff that we need to really have some brutal, honest conversations about with our leadership team, to say, how are we showing up as a leadership team, and how are we allowing our teams to feel vulnerable in front of us and creating that right atmosphere that allows, and that right environment that allows for that. And I talked about this yesterday in a webinar that I was on, and it's becoming a bit of a buzzword, but psychological safety is something that we talk about a lot, and it's from a behavioral standpoint, is that are we creating those right environments and those outlets for people to be able to comfortably come up to you and say, right, I'm not feeling the best. My mental health, aside from my physical health, is actually taking a toll because of all of this stuff that I've got going on at home, all of the finances that I'm trying to juggle, all of the relationships that you're trying to do in work, and the workload that you've got really impacts how we show up on a day-to-day basis. And I know, Kay, that's something that you're really passionate about as well.
Yeah, I'm not shy of sharing vulnerability. I lead with vulnerability because it creates. So I don't believe psychological safety can ever 100% exist in any organisation. I know the theory, I know it like the back of my hand, and I question it because it was built, the way that it was built wasn't based upon like everybody's environments and the reality of it. And can I just put you both on the spot and ask you a question, and I'm going to answer it as well. When was the last time you both had a personal development conversation or did something for yourself and not others?
Oh, I can answer that.
Go on.
I've just recently achieved my qualification for Six Sigma Black Belt. So I had to actively take myself out of my business for a week to do it. But I saw it as something that would help me help my clients. So just this year, Lean Six Sigma Black Belt qualified.
I think you've got me beaten there. Mine, I do it with some of the people that work for Call Centre Helper, but in the context of actually doing it for me, I can't actually remember the last time I've done that, which is not the first time a conversation with you two has led me to think, okay, I need to rethink how I'm doing things here.
Yeah.
So it's, as always, this is very useful having this conversation with the two of you.
Yeah. Mine was a week ago in here. So I'm in a place called Dagenham Library and Museum in Doncaster, my hometown. I'm working here a few days a week, and I met up with Kate Jenkinson, amazing lady. Kate and I met 4 or 5 years ago. We've been saying, I'm going to meet, and we did. I had the best coaching conversation. So my personal development from that has led me to be kinder to self. And so there's half a day a week that I do stuff for me now. So I'm just finishing one of my NLP techniques and writing about it, and I've been doing it daily. And Kate was like, well, why aren't you doing it for yourself? So my question is to leaders out there that get a chance to watch this or read anything that you write, Zander, is when was the last time you did something for yourself as a leader? Because if you're doing that, your team are going to watch it. They're not necessarily going to, you don't really have to tell them, but they're going to watch it. People learn from watching. The problem we've got at the moment, let's all be honest, is we're hybrid. There's not real influencing taking place. It's scarce because what we're doing is we're just reading emails and taking orders, really. We're like order takers, all of us. So it's a question. And I think people are intelligent and conscious enough to have a seed planted where we ask each other a question. We go, shit, I've not done that. We're intelligent people.
I call what you've just described there, Kate, as the great disconnection.
Yeah.
So we've had the great resignation. I call that the great disconnection. It's how are we intentionally making the efforts to engage with people? And it's easier to disconnect than it is to connect because it requires effort. It requires us to be intentional. So we are going through a period where we are so connected virtually, we are actually more disconnected as a result.